For Session Update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka and Tax Chair Roger Chamberlain highlighted the Senate Republican tax plan at the Capitol, including a comparison of their plan with the House Republican plan and Governor Dayton's tax plan. Here's that press conference.
Well, good morning. Thank you for coming. First of all, I want you to know that we saved the best for last, and so the Senate version comes out today. But just a reminder, when we met earlier and we rolled out what we wanted to do, we talked about how we're going to advance Minnesota. One of the things was the infrastructure bill. We're going to make sure that that got done, and that's moving forward. We had a whole section on caring for Minnesota, which was the safe schools, how do we address opiate abuse, making sure our seniors are taken care of, and so on. And one of the key things that we knew we had to address was the tax bill. And with the federal tax changes that happened, most significant since 1986, they changed that in November, we knew we had work to do. And so Senator Chamberlain and his team have worked tirelessly to make sure that we held Minnesotans harmless. And that was our #1 goal this year, because we didn't have a lot of resources. We thought we might have $1 billion of surplus, but really it was only $329 million. And so Senator Chamberlain and his team worked hard. And in the end, the thing I want to say, and he'll say again, is 99.9% of Minnesotans will see no tax increase in Minnesota, and in fact, many will see a tax decrease. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Roger Chamberlain to present the bill.
Wow. Good morning. Like the Majority Leader said, this was a tough challenge, and I never miss an opportunity to thank the staff. We have great staff. They're a small staff, partisan and nonpartisan, but they not only had to dig into this challenge, which was significant, and we can talk more later about that for them, but they had to manage the challenges of 66 other senators and their demands and requests and desires. So the staff, both our staff and the nonpartisan, really above and beyond the call for this. We committed about $168 million to tax relief. As Senator Gazelka mentioned, resources became limited and restricted, but we did commit $168 million to this effort. Some of the highlights, I look at this bill as a bridge, and if you will, a bridge to the future. We did some work last year. We have done some work this year, and we will continue to do the work. As long as we serve the citizens of this state, we will strive to give them the relief they're entitled to and deserve, and that the state needs to go ahead in the future to face our challenges. We need economic growth, and we will continue to work for their benefit as long as we are here. So first, as Senator Gazelka mentioned, 99% of Minnesotans will not see an increase, or they will see a decrease. They'll be protected. 99% of Minnesotans will be protected from any tax increases, 99.8 to be exact, 99.8. About 82% will see decreases. 82% will see decreases in their tax, on their tax bill. Secondly, so we first 99%, 82% rates, we reduced the lowest rate, the 5.35% rate, to 5.1%. We also built in triggers. The triggers are automatic tax reductions based on economic growth and a couple other things conditioned on the budget process. Simplicity, this bill is simple in its process and execution, and that's important for Minnesotans. The simplicity means we conform to most of the items we can, and then basically use the itemized deductions that were existing in current law. Current law, existing itemized deductions, we basically just bring it over. So I believe that, just to review, 99, 82, rate cuts from 5.35 to 5.1, triggers to continue those rate reductions, and then simplicity for the Minnesotans. I mentioned conformity. One of the biggest, one of the reform items you could say is AGI, going from federal taxable income to adjusted gross income. That was, we thought about it and talked about it quite a bit, but in the end that was a no-brainer to do, to go to AGI. We keep, like I said, popular the standard deduction, the personal exemptions, those sorts of things that will make it easier for Minnesotans to transition from what we had to the future. So again, it's a bridge to the future. And with the resources we had, we were able to give the Minnesotans something back, some hope for the future. So I won't go on about that anymore. I'll just close by saying again that we need reform, we need tax relief for the state, we need economic growth. There is no doubt about it. So this bill is a good start. It is a bridge, and there is much more work to be done for Minnesota and here at the Capitol. So I and my tax committee members and others behind me, are committed to continuing that work, not only this year, but through the summer and into next session, because it's vitally important. There's a lot of important things to do in this state, but if we don't have economic growth and stability in our revenue system, then we are in big trouble. So thank you very much, and I thank the tax committee members as well, both Republican and Democrat. We have a very professional committee, and it works well together. We have our differences, but it works very well together. So
Let's show them the chart. We can flip that over.
we have props. We don't do that in tax committee, but we have props here.
Props. So if we can say the governor's plan is here, the House and the Senate. The governor's plan is okay. The House plan is a good plan. And the Senate Republican plan, I'm just saying that. I mean, the proof is in the chart, but Roger, if I can take it from the microphone, just to explain for a second. So if you can see, as far as how we use the surplus, the Senate has 168 million, the House was 107 million, and just on the tax, or the income tax part of it, the governor was 16 million minus. He used the sick tax as well. I just don't want to go on that part. I want to focus more on ours. Those numbers changed last night, so I think they're all up 8 million. So instead of 168, I think it's 176. But so they're all up. But you can see where we started. We invested more there. The House invested a little more on transportation. We just felt like we wanted to make sure that the individual didn't pay more taxes in Minnesota. Remember, the federal bill, 90% are paying a tax or having a tax decrease. But so that was the second part. And then a part that we all have agreement is the starting point of the federal adjusted gross income. We all said that that's the direction we should go. So we all lined up there. One other area that's not on the chart that we all agreed on is Section 179 conformity, which helps the ag community in particular. And then do we preserve itemized deductions? Yes. The Senate and the governor do, and the House did most of it. And that's where we come to, because of that, we hit 99.9% or 99.8%, don't have a tax increase, where the House is about 95%. And as you look at the reforms in the Senate, we aimed, Senator Chamberlain and his team aimed to lower the bottom tax bracket, 0.25%, I think that's right. And that affects everyone. But it first starts with the person with the lowest income, and then everybody benefits from that. Where the House took a slightly different path, they aimed towards the middle class, having a middle class tax cut, and that's a good direction too. And then finally, does that the percentage held harmless? You see that where both the House and the Senate are close, but the Senate's bill is virtually everyone. And finally, does it promote economic growth? And that making sure that the consumer doesn't have to pay more taxes in Minnesota. We tried to hold our business community harmless, not up or down, but we poured the money into reducing the income tax brackets and for the personal income tax. But with that, I'll let Senator Chamberlain answer questions, and I might jump in too.
Senator, could you explain to us this trigger mechanism going forward? How will that work?
About 11 other states across the country use it. Only a few do it correctly. We follow kind of a North Carolina version. We will do it correctly. It'll be based on economic growth and a couple other budget conditions. So as we go forward in November, the bill is written that in November forecast, look at the numbers. If there's a surplus and we have a couple other conditions met, which means we have economic growth, a surplus, a couple other conditions that are met, then the Commission on Revenue is directed to lower the rates. They will continue to be lowered until we reach 1% reduction in all rates, all individual income tax brackets and the corporate. So four individual brackets and then the one corporate. So based on economic growth, a couple other conditions, and then that would automatically be reduced by 0.1% each time.
Senator, what is that level? What is that level? Is it for a surplus? And what is the economic growth have to be?
Well, not to get too technical, but we estimate if we want to cover a rate reduction of say 0.1% for each, you have to have enough to cover that. So the surplus would have to be enough to cover that. Right now, that would be about $172 million, give or take. If you had the corporate in there, it has to be a little bit higher. So, and that'll change over time, but we want the surplus to be enough. The bill's written where the surplus has to be enough to exceed the rate reductions. And then you still have to have some surplus. In other words, you cannot use every dollar of the surplus.
Mr. Chairman, likely there will be a fair amount of resistance from the administration on this. They will argue the unpredictability and the forecast as well as the economy. How do you respond to that?
I say that it's very predictable. They have the government now has automatic inflators and increasers in a lot of in our budgets and our law. This goes in the opposite direction. Says we're going to start paying attention to citizens. So it's already there on the other side. We're just applying it to the positive side. Secondly, not to get too deep into this, but we need economic growth. This state is now an outlier. There's an active campaign across the country to point out Minnesota, along with 4 other states, they have actually said, if you're in these 5 states, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Minnesota, California, get out or don't go there. That's what they're saying on national publications. And we are an outlier. We need economic growth. We have extraordinary challenges we're going to face demographically, retiring citizens, plus labor shortages. We need to reward work and stop punishing it. The current tax system in Minnesota is abusive. It punishes success and hard work. We need to change that. We need to open the door and say, we here in Minnesota are going to offer you everyday value. You come here, we can outperform, outcreate, outproduce anybody in this country, but they have to be given the opportunity. So we need economic growth, we need people, we need bodies, and this is one way to get there.
On the flip side, if there is a shortfall, should there be a trigger to increase taxes?
Well, heck no. No. Well, because this state is top, I think the number is top 5 per capita in spending. If we don't do something with this state, the other side of this equation is spending. We need to reward people for the work and for their success and say that they are welcome here and we want you to stay here. But if we don't, the other side of the equation, if we don't get spending under control, it's going to get a lot worse with all these seniors retiring and the liabilities and obligations we have to support them. So do we need tax increases? No. Tax reductions will generate economic growth and throw off revenue. Tax reductions generate economic growth and throw off revenue into the coffers. If you tax something more, you'll get less of it, right? If a store raises their prices on something, you'll probably go to the next store to get a lower price. So that's the basic principle. We have to pay taxes, but it has to be reasonable.
Governor Dayton ran and won on increasing taxes. How does this run?
Well, I think there were a lot of things he was running on, so that wasn't the only thing. So that's really not the right question. He won for a lot of reasons and not just tax increases. Yeah, sure.
If I could address that one too, I mean, the year that the governor had the House and Senate in Democrat control, they had the largest tax increase that I ever remember, over $2 billion of tax increase. And 2 years later, we had the House and Senate, or within the next 2 and 4 years, we had the House and Senate back in Republican hands. So I'm not sure that that was why he won. And the second thing I wanted to mention is Senator Chamberlain and his team lowered the lowest tax bracket 25%. And one of the things that we looked at is around the country, if you look at our lowest tax rate is higher than the highest tax rate in 23 states. You think about that. Our lowest tax rate is higher than the highest tax rate in 23 states. So by addressing that one, it also hopefully will get us down on that number as well.
Mr. Leader, the bill does not have the provider tax extension in it. How important is that from your standpoint? If the governor insists on that, is that a deal breaker as far as you're concerned?
It is a deal breaker. We have said that we worked hard to remove that sick tax or provider tax. It's a 2% tax on virtually everything that you do when you're moving through with a medical issue. It hurts everybody, and then somebody that's low income and suddenly has to have more cost on their health care because of that tax. We wanted to get rid of, and so we've told the governor that that is off the table. That is an issue that we're going to have to address in the next few years, but it's not an issue that we have to do right now.
So why not get rid of it now if it's a bad?
In fact, it's already scheduled to sunset right now. I believe it's 2019.
Why not sunset it right away?
So the question is, why not sunset it right away? Well, first of all, we got to do safe schools, and then we're doing the opioid abuse, and we're doing a bonding bill, and we're doing a tax bill, and so on and so on. It's a year that I don't see us doing it now. So.
Chairman, when Minnesotans go to fill out the tax return next year, is it going to be easier than it was this year, or more complicated?
It'll be either easier or the same. That was part of the plan. What can we do for rate reductions and economic growth for the citizens of the state? And secondly, how do we maintain that simplicity? There are other ways to do this, but this was a bridge to get where we need to go. So it'll be easier or about the same.
And break down that 99.8%, if you would. How many will see no increase, and how many will see a decrease? And how big of a tax cut does the people expect? Give them an idea.
Okay, so it's across all income brackets, all AGI. About 2.19 million will see a decrease from 0 to over 150 bucks. So again, about 82%, 2.12 million people will see a decrease of 0 to over $150. About 470,000 will, according to our runs, will see no increase, and only about 2,500 will see some increase, and that increase would be from 0 to over 150 bucks.
Who are those people?
I don't have it in front of me, but there's only like literally maybe 80 people below the 150 AGI. So 2,500 people, and I believe it is the, most of them are in the over 150 AGI area.
So last time we cut income tax rates was under Ventura, and folks said perhaps the largest shortfall stemmed from that. We had a $6 billion shortfall years after that cut. Is there any way this cut could create a massive shortfall again?
No.
Why not?
Because we will have, last year's bill and this year's bill will generate economic growth, consumer confidence, and that is what it's designed to do. We have to pay some taxes. We can't pay nothing, but we can't pay too much, right? There's a sweet spot in there in the middle, so we pay some taxes. We can't pay too much. Right now, Minnesota's an outlier. The bell curve, we're an outlier, and that is a problem because a lot of people go to a lot of other places to live and invest and move and retire.
What's different though? Because that was said 20 years ago as well. That there was
What's different?
That would come from it.
Here's part of the difference is you have to have fiscal discipline on the other side, right? The other side of the equation. That has to be part of it. But this is a modest tax cut to start, very modest, but it still is money in people's pockets. Economic growth throws off revenue, and that'll go into the pockets. So what we need to do is have economic growth get people here. I can't say it enough. The labor crunch, go to the demographer's website. The labor crunch is at crisis levels. It is epic. We estimate 60,000 people short today, and by 2020, 2022, that's going to rise, they say, as high as 240 to 280. We need people in the state. Electrolux just left St. Cloud. They're going to leave St. Cloud. Take $500 million and 900 employees out. So one of their reasons, they had many reasons, is cost of doing business. And they're going to go to North Carolina and Tennessee. We can like that, we can hate it, it's just fact. We can't make them stay, we can't give people papers to stay in the borders. We have to do something to reward work and stop punishing it.
Ventura was followed by a Republican governor. When you say you have to have fiscal discipline, did Tim Plenty not have enough fiscal discipline?
I love you, Mary. You're a master at this. I'm not here to talk about Tim Pawlenty and his policies.
So I will say that because I was here in 2005 and 6, and he reduced spending, and we didn't increase taxes during that time, and that was an extremely difficult time. Really, it depends on what the economy is going to do too, and that's something we can't control. The other side of the formula that we must control is spending. If you look at the growth of spending in our state agencies, we have to watch that. That to me is as critical or more critical issue than giving $168 million back to the taxpayers. The growth that we have on a regular basis is something we can't forget about.
So do you need a Republican governor then? Is that your?
I think a Republican governor would just be wonderful. Think about the fact that we've never had a Republican governor in my lifetime, Republican Senate and Republican House at the same time, and what the opportunity would be that we could do to show how we can lead in Minnesota.
Are you guys saying that this amount of tax breaks that you're putting in here is actually going to move Minnesota's economy, move its labor market? People are going to start moving here because of these numbers? Or are you just saying that's the principle that you're working on?
So the question was, will this tax bill actually move the needle in the way that we're talking about? And I would say the answer is no. This is holding Minnesota harmless. Senator Chamberlain really wanted to do transformational tax reform, which we just didn't have the resources to do unless we were willing to decrease spending and get a governor to agree with that. And so that was an issue that we couldn't do, but that is the direction we want to go, where we become more competitive both for the individual taxpayer and anybody else that's paying taxes in Minnesota.
Good question.
Senator, how far down the road of conformity are you going with these deductions staying in place?
What you mean, the itemized deductions? Well, basically, we keep current Minnesota law for the most part. Some things will go away because they become redundant or not necessary. But we're essentially, the simplest way to look at this and think about it is if you itemize before, and only about 25% of people itemize deductions on the federal level before. So if you itemize deductions previously, we're just going to accept the prior IRS code and keep doing that. We're basically taking that over with very, very few changes and bringing that over. So that's the extent. There's a couple tiny things in there, but nothing major. Basically the same itemized deduction. So if you were the 25% doing it before, you'll do it in Minnesota the same way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we just consider for just a second, if you don't mind, on transportation? Thank you, sir.
I almost made it.
Quick question, quarters of Congress got rolled out this morning, MnDOT, your finance bill, it's a 50-50 split, the House does not. They say that's micromanaging, basically. I'm wondering what your response is.
Well, I'll respond very briefly to the quarters of commerce designation this morning. I will tell you I'm very disappointed in the absence of rural versus metro. And if you take a look at the list, it in reality is all metro. Now, I have not had an opportunity, because I just came from Finance Committee, to really dig into it and look at it fully. But I do not believe that MnDOT did a good job at all in addressing parity between the rural and the metro, and I'm very disappointed in that. And it would be my intention to have a conversation with Commissioner Zelli today about that.
Thank you.